you can feel free to epistemologize the questions.
No
Someone's
problem.
feeling a little bit inadequate about their PhD, aren't they?
This PhD was on photosynthesis.
Yeah.
But if you're saying, for example, none of them are correct,
But
the whole
can't-
ummah was wrong, or
No,
something
obviously,
like this,
you know.
You see what I mean? So like 5 prayers in a day.
Yeah,
plus
yeah.
witr.
You know, speaking to different charities, the majority of the money that they raise is zakat.
Is that true?
Yeah.
I mean, it
They
makes
say
sense
zakat.
for you because your name is.
Because some people have this sense of if you start thinking, it's dangerous. If you stick to the texts, it's safe. And what I try to impress on people is all of sacred knowledge is dangerous.
There were people we'd speak to, subhanAllah, they'd have huge houses, lots of nice cars, going on lots of holidays, yet their zakat actually, by a technical definition, would be 0.
Assalamu alaikum wa Ramadan Mubarak everyone. I'm really excited about today's podcast, but a quick message before we start. If you're anything like me, you'll probably leave giving sadaqah every day in Ramadan right to the last minute, right? And then all of a sudden you can't find a link on your phone to donate or whatever. Sound familiar? Well, we just put our Ramadan appeal fundraising thingy right up on the top of our screen on Islam 20, on every page, so you can quickly tap and give sadaqah. But as it's a new feature, you can just do me a favor right now and check it's working properly. Just all you need to do is make a donation of £100 and send up a monthly donation. Let me know in the comments below when the money leaves your account. No refunds there, yeah? But seriously, we've all got a massive chance to multiply the reward for each donation that we make to Islam Trinity, up to 700 times, subhanAllah. So please be generous and remember this is a unique reward. Every donation is not only an ongoing sadaqah jari for you, but inshallah it spreads into so many different projects that you'll get a share in, inshallah. The demos for the impressed, national campaigns, film productions, articles, national khutbah days, shows like this, and so much more. I'm fed up of hearing that more and more Muslims are losing their confidence to live by Islam because they think it's not relevant anymore. This is why Islam 21C, which stands for Islam in the 21st century, was set up to counter this soul-destroying issue, which can ultimately lead Muslims into the hellfire, subhanAllah. It's that serious. Look, I'm going to make a donation right now to start us off. The link's in the description below and on Islam22.com. Bismillah. Join me and enjoy the show. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to another episode of the Unscripted Podcast. We're on our brand new set. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Let us know how you're finding it in the comments below. We have with us Sheikh Dr. Sohail Hanif and our good old-fashioned former co-host Umer Suleman. MashaAllah. Umar, assalamu alaikum. How's it going?
Alhamdulillah, it's good.
What
Thanks
everyone
for
wants to know
having
is you wear glasses now. When did that happen?
Well, it's been happening for a while.
I just never noticed.
Just never wore them online.
Yeah. Umar, of course, he's the general manager of Wahid Invest in the UK now, mashallah tabarakallah. So
someone kicked me out of a job here, so I had to find other honest employment.
He had to take the demotion. But our special guest today is Sheikh Sohail Hanif, mashallah tabarakallah. He is the CEO of NZF, National Zakat Foundation. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, very, very good. Thanks.
So I'm really excited to talk to you. We've been on the cards for a while to meet. And I just found out before we started recording, probably the most interesting and important thing about you, which is you're an Imperial College alumnus.
Yes.
So mashallah.
Like yourself.
Like many fine people, across the world. The guy behind the camera as well. I just wanted to take this opportunity for us to get to know you a bit and the audience as well. And I'm going to be implementing something that I made up myself, which is called a rapid fire questions.
I've seen these on TV and I'm quite scared. Whenever I watch
Okay. Omar made them up when he used to be the co-host.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so I'm not around anymore to challenge him, so just like taking credit for my work.
The truth now. Omar made this thing up and now everyone started doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's just a few questions. And I just noticed, just looking back at this, that they're almost all about food. So I added a few last minute ones. So you know how it goes. If you get the answer wrong, then I'm just kidding. There's no wrong answers. You just
You know, first thing that pops into your head: tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Astaghfirullah. Well, let's edit that out.
Yeah.
Favorite food?
It's a bit of a neither, to be honest, but
Neither. Okay. Yeah,
we do a bit more Coke than Pepsi. It's a 7-Up.
Yeah.
7. Okay. Yeah. You don't have to. You can.
Diet 7-Up.
You can challenge the question as well.
Coca-Cola.
You know.
Coca-Cola.
These are.
I was trying to get through them quickly, but I'm very happy to philosophize.
You can.
Philosophize.
Yeah. I mean, your PhD subject was in the. I wrote it down actually. It's quite. I mean, this is unscripted, but I have to write certain things down because they're good phrases. Your PhD was in Islamic legal epistemology. Yeah, mashallah.
Okay, but how you
I
pronounce that?
completely know what that means, but yeah. So you can feel free to challenge the questions, epistemologize the questions. Yeah.
No
Someone's
problem.
feeling a little bit inadequate about their PhD, aren't they?
No,
This PhD was on photosynthesis.
Yeah, a bit of PhD envy going on there.
And, if I get the chance, I'm going to ask you about it today.
Exactly.
absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about such an illuminating subject. Okay, biryani or naan?
Biryani, of course.
Okay, mashallah. Cake or gulab jamun?
Cake.
Football or cricket?
That's a tricky one, you know. Mo Salah brought me back into football. I had a long time away from football.
I know who that is.
Mo Salah was like a bridge. Like if you're into football, you become religious. If you're into religion, you become into football. So he's like an odd bridge there. But otherwise, would have been cricket, watching cricket.
Okay, nice. Final question: Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat?
Absolutely, Street Fighter.
Okay. I think you got them all right, mashallah.
Yeah.
So, right, you're.
Does he get some, by the way?
Do you want some?
I'm done.
I mean, you've probably laid awake, at
Sweating.
night, thinking, what would my answers be?
What would my answers be today?
Yeah, when I was looking back at these, I thought, these would change every day. Depends how I feel.
Yeah.
What I've had for lunch. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
But Omar,
Yeah, go.
how's life?
Busy. but good.
So you're the general manager of Wahid Invest now.
That's correct. Yeah.
And this is not a pod. Is this sponsored?
No, it's not. And you're not going to get
So
sponsored by
that's the
mentioning it either.
That's the last we're going to hear about that then.
Don't invoice me for it.
So mashallah, Wahid Invest, really good, etc., etc.
Alhamdulillah. Halal investing.
And they're going to be donating £1,000 to the person who
Yeah.
quickly think of something that we want to do. No. I did that on stage once at one of the family events.
Yeah.
I was doing some game show with the audience, and I was like, first prize, £10,000 donated by the Invest. They're like, no. Okay,
Alhamdulillah.
not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored.
That's right.
So Sheikh Sohail, he is of course, the head of NZF, and Omar, you've been talking to him in the past as well. NZF, National Zakat Foundation, Wahid Invest, finance related stuff. Obviously, Sadaqah is a charitable organization. Having these two minds on together, got some interesting kind of things I wanted to get off my chest, and also just questions to ask both of you about your thoughts about certain areas. But before we crack on, like I said, we've done the rapid fire, but let's kind of delve into your biography a bit more. I got your biography from Mahbub, shout out, and he sent it over. It's very, very impressive, mashallah, tabarakallah. I don't want to kind of praise you to your face, but I mean, I already mentioned the kind of pinnacle of your life so far, and that is being at Imperial College. And funny
Don't
thing,
talk about that much enough now.
Most people don't know this, and you're welcome. But he did like the hardest degree at Imperial College, mashallah. It's like 2 degrees. Mahmoud thinks his degree was the hardest one.
Word on the street it was between information systems engineering, which is
Yeah.
what I did, and between aeronautical, which is what that gentleman did.
Yeah, mashallah.
So
Judging by what they've gone on to achieve, I'll leave it there.
So information system technology is basically a computing degree and an electronic engineering degree rolled into one. So it's 2 degrees. it's it's destroyed many young.
Engineering is when the air hostesses put the bags in the locker, isn't it? That
No, it's when they.
I think it's when you have to brace.
get the boxes in, make sure they can fit it right.
It's like Tetris.
That's why I didn't get a job.
So obviously it adequately qualified you for being the CEO of Zakat organization. I'm not one to talk about people's qualifications matching their job at the end of the day, but mashallah, you went from there, you studied, mashallah, tabarakallah. You studied in, I think, Jordan,
Yep.
the Middle East, Jordan, for over a decade, mashallah, tabarakallah. And your PhD in Islamic legal epistemology won the British Islamic Studies prize for best font or something used in a PhD or
Longest title.
the British Islamic Studies prize in 2019, mashallah.
Mashallah.
This new segment is called The Voice of the People. We asked our viewers at home and in random places in public life to give us some messages for us to play on the program, and obviously maybe comment on if you find it interesting. This is from a young brother. I think his name is on the screen. I forgot his name right now, but he was asked by one of our team members, what advice do you have for your peers? Not peers, your peers, people of a similar age. Yeah. And I thought his answer was quite good, so let's have a listen.
If I'm being honest, I think something that's very common nowadays is that people aren't proud of their identity as a Muslim. For example, not being arrogant or anything, but I'm proud to wear an imama, and it's something that I take pride in because it's the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I feel like a lot of people, they'll copy a lot of non-Muslims, and they'll be influenced by their friends in college. And obviously, you can be influenced positively in college, but I feel like a lot of people, especially nowadays, can get affected very negatively by the influences in college, and especially university. And I feel like you got to be proud of where you come from and who you are as a person.
I was really proud of that young brother, mashallah,
Mashallah.
tabarakallah. Really, jazakumullah khairan, bro, for that inspiring little message. Gave me a bit of a boost of hope, of the young brothers and sisters out there. So tell us about your journey. Just your Imperial College. Did you always want to go and study knowledge in a traditional sense? Or?
Yeah, so I guess I'll try and give the short version, because there is a long one as well.
You have to pay extra for that.
But the short one was, I think before starting my degree, I went on these intensive summer programs on Arabic and Islamic studies. So they kind of, obviously, you're young, impressionable, 17-year-old. So that experience before university, I think charted out the course for the rest of my life, whether I like it or not. It was even during Imperial, the truth is I didn't know what they were talking about. I just knew who to get the notes from and when the exams were and what you have to do. It's probably project management at the most advanced level, working backwards from the exam to know how to pass. So all of my free time in Imperial was about learning Arabic and related matters. So post-degree, going to the Middle East was something I'd been thinking about for a while. And I was there for much longer than the original plan. I told my dad it was a few years. It became 12.
Mashallah.
You have to lay it on year by year. That's a message for the kids watching at home. You don't say, Dad, I'm going for 12.
And I'll see you next year.
And so I did some full-time study for a couple of years. Then I started working. There was a very new Arabic school that started called Qasid. So I was there as an Arabic grammar teacher. It grew to be the leading study abroad center now for Western universities. So it's doing really well.
So it was an Arabic school.
It was Arabic for non-natives,
for
non-native speakers.
So ASOL. Like ASOL.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Arabic is a second language.
Yeah.
No need to be offensive.
Yeah.
So I was there I worked there for about 5 years actually, teaching Arabic grammar. Arabic grammar is the proper engineering equivalent of studying a language.
Yeah, now it makes sense.
So that's the direct link, I think, information systems and grammar.
Wow.
And then I went on to a place it was again the pioneer of online education at the time, which is an institution called Sunni Path, which later on was called Qibla. So I did online Islamic studies teaching there, Quranic studies and
that was
fiqh
before the
studies.
days of Zoom.
That was before Zoom was invented. Yeah, a guy from Imperial actually, very nice gentleman called Ismail Ramzan. Shout out to him as well. He designed the whole interface before there was Zoom and before there was anything else. It was a nice pioneering, online education experience. At the latter part of my time in Jordan, I think I spent time with teachers who sort of combined a traditional approach with an academic, critical research sort of approach. That impressed me a lot, and it kind of moved my world a bit, and I wanted to sort of be in their space. And that's kind of what made me want to be in a research environment. I was very happy at the time to do it in Jordan, except that they'd make you do the bachelor's all over again. And after doing Imperial, I had to go back and do another bachelor's, master's, PhD. And so then that was the beginning of my journey back here again. And so I'm going into the long version. I'm sorry.
That's good. That's good.
I just don't know how
want to hear.
How
we can cut it out if it's boring.
Shortify the story here. Yeah. But it was a quest for meaning about what it means to study within a knowledge tradition. It was because I guess a very traditional approach. I mean, I was seeing a lot of textualism being passed off as traditionalism, but the idea was there was something deeper here, and it was just a quest to kind of make a theory for it. How can you work with classical texts and arrive at a mode of thought that you could say is faithful to this tradition? Sorry, I'm already losing for words here, but that was my quest for the last 10 years. Hanafism was the microcosm of my quest. So the Hanafi school combined particular things that were fascinating for me. A sort of interest in a Salaf tradition, which started meaning a lot to me, and a particular theory of rationalism, which was grounded in Salafism. All these have to be explained now, unfortunately. But it was a really fascinating knowledge tradition of thought, jurisprudential thought. And so for the last 10 years of my life, I've just been trying to really grapple with how do you describe it? How do you define it? How do you systematize it? And how can you actually learn from these texts as opposed to what I've seen, which is using the texts? I feel we speak to the text sometimes as opposed to learning from the texts. So anyway, very vague words, I'm sorry. You'll have to pick it apart as you like it now. So that's been my time for the last 10 years, really. Yeah. And I've been lecturing, very fortunate to lecture at Cambridge Muslim College for the last 4 years.
Okay, yeah.
Where I was given almost a blank slate to teach Islamic law. So really, it was a really thought-provoking 4 years for me of really exploring the full dimensions of an Islamic legal tradition with a group of very smart students. So that was really, really good for me.
MashaAllah.
NZF was a parallel journey for me over the last 8 years or so.
Yeah.
Something about the idea of a national Zakat foundation, just the word, just the title, it almost summarized all of my journey, which was systematizing the institutions of fiqh. This is what it means to me, and maybe we can explore what I mean by that. And so I've been very close to NZF in various capacities. I worked there for 1 year in 2016 as head of research and development, part-time, where I was working with local scholars to make a scholarly panel to guide us in particular questions at NZF. And so coming into charity management, it's not the space I've been in, which is quite academic. But the idea of working to construct a fiqh institution, a fiqh-infused institution to develop community, for me, it's the summary of everything I've been thinking and dreaming and pondering for at least the last 10 years. So it's quite, intellectually speaking, it's a very direct line. Although professionally, it's a bit of a sidestep.
Yeah.
That's the
it's really interesting.
Yeah, that's the overview anyway.
I mean, what does let's unpack some of
we have
those
to unpack a lot there.
terminologies maybe. What does traditionalism mean for you then in that regard? Because I mean, there's different kind of, even technically, qualitatively, there's different meanings people use. Even hadith scholars are sometimes translated as traditionalists or whatever. That's obviously what do you mean by traditionalism here?
Yeah, these are such tricky words to unpack, and they're very personal as well, meaning they mean things to each of us in our respective journeys as well. Yeah. And it's not for me to own the term, which is, we all have it in our own ways, really. But I went abroad to study a tradition of learning. The idea of a knowledge tradition is, we are tapping into texts which have been taught for centuries, which have been embedded into Muslim civilization, which have really informed the institutions of Muslim civilization, informed their madrasas. And the production of madrasas informed society. They were madrasas nowadays, we think of them as things people do when they can't get a job. We have a very particular view of the word madrasa. But madrasa was like, the most powerful institution maybe in Islamic history. Because madrasa was the essence of lawmaking. Because today we think of law as something tied with government. Law in classical Islam was outside of government. The madrasa was really the pillar of a legal vision of society. The products of the madrasas, which were the ulama, they were sort of like middlemen between a ruling class and between the public. So the madrasa then was a public representation which military commanders had to deal with, had to negotiate, had to respect, had to empower to govern society. And so these texts, which we study in these traditionalist circles, texts of fiqh, fiqh is my interest, or even these, you can say less public-facing, but still very important, tafsir and then hadith, and obviously the more philosophical stuff, the kalam, etc. These were really pillars of Islamic history. They're not just texts. And the whole history, the whole political, the whole ruling class, in some odd way, was subordinated to this tradition. And so the tradition is powerful, and it captures the imagination of young people when they want to go and study traditional learning. And the only trick of tricks is trying to understand why you're studying this tradition. Is it to learn literacy in text reading, which is what sometimes it becomes? Or is it to really understand the thought patterns, to really enter this world of reasoning and thought and argumentation and epistemology, which means a way of thinking, a way of arriving at knowledge, so you can be true to it where you are? And so my whole passion of the last 10 years is to understand what it means to be part of a living tradition and to inform that. That's just my simple summary.
I always say, when you want to emulate someone truly, or a tradition, or follow a way, you don't do what it says, or what you don't do necessarily what its founder did. You would do what they would do had they been in your position. Does that kind of encapsulate?
Yeah, completely. And there's no 100% correct answer, you see. That's what I try to also convey to people, because some people have this sense of, if you start thinking, it's dangerous. If you stick to the texts, it's safe. And what I try to impress on people is all of sacred knowledge is dangerous. Whether you're sticking to the text or whether you're thinking, you're claiming something, which is God says you should do such and such. That's a dangerous claim, whichever way you're doing it.
This is the problem between that old expression, تقديم العقل على النقل. Putting putting transmitted things before the aql. Before, I don't know translate in one way, depending on it's a loaded term. The problem is the naql is something understood and has to be something. It doesn't directly speak to a reality here. This is what we do in Sabil, in the Sabil curriculum, the Sabil Institute. Is it's like an epistemology of Islamic thought, right? Of splitting up the process of coming to a conclusion. It's manhajul istidlal, of deducing any meaning. It's not just, okay, you have the text, you have the sound, the texts that are sound in terms of how they reached you, but okay, what's the intended meaning behind those texts? Number one. But crucially, what is the correct or intended way to implement in real life the message or the meaning embedded within that text? And this is where so many people make so many egregious errors and end up fracturing the ranks of the Muslims, for example, by thinking that they're faithful to the texts, thinking that they're faithful to a tradition, or thinking that they're faithful to the sunnah, because they or someone they're following, they quoted a verse, they quoted a hadith, and they're saying, okay, look, this is what the hadith says, therefore we are the ones, this is the Islamic position or something.
Yeah.
I really hate that phrase. This is the Islamic position on whatever, and then insert, you know, some new kind of reality that we haven't kind of seen in the last 400, 1400 years. This is the Islamic position on that. Where, you know, it's an Islamic position, it's your attempt at an Islamic position, but it's really annoying sometimes, you know, when people are so definitive. So I don't have a question really, I'm just kind of trying to bouncing off that. I was really kind of glad that you know, this is a thing that many people are studying, and look forward to learning.
I think it's good to segue even to what we're going to be talking about as well, just because if you come to the understanding that the way I phrased it, all of sacred knowledge is dangerous, then the only path to safety is doing your best. It's not it, and doing your best means a lot of prayer, a lot of turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and a lot of deep reflection. And you have to, off the back of all of that study, you have to now move forward in what you feel is the right thing to do. And that's not easy, but that's the only path of safety. That's where you meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, I did my best. Anything called safe, sticking to the text, a lot of that stuff is not thinking. And it's hard to say you're doing your best then. So that's all I understand. But that segues into what we're talking about, which is you take sacred knowledge, but what are you meant to be doing with it?
But there's a bit of a there's a sweet spot, right? Like a Goldilocks region where you're not necessarily saying that everything is, so one maybe extreme is things are black and white, but there's another extreme that all we see is grey, right? And that there's one way, if you actually look at, for example, one of the things you said, you got scholars together, local scholars together to bring more minds alike. It's not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't leave fiqh open to even an individual scholars, you know, kind of ijtihad and sincere effort and prayer and so forth. He told us, not directly, but of course, but indirectly, look, as a community, as a body, you are, you know, you can arrive at what my ruling is on a matter as a body, bringing the ulama together, for example.
I think there's kind of two things here. One is kind of a physical response, and one is a spiritual response, if I can say that. One is the physical. What I mean by the physical response is actually when you understand, you can be almost confident, or you should feel confident that you've gone through a process by either studying, introspection, speaking to others, getting some sort of consensus. But you should be confident enough to come to a decision, but then being humble enough to realize that you may still be wrong. And it's, you know, this having both of these at the same time, because you want to be confident. We need to be confident in terms of leadership, in terms of guidance, and being able to understand what our next steps are. But actually having that humility that ultimately we are insan, we're deficient, you know. So, you know, it doesn't become that definitive. And then if you kind of have that balance, the way you kind of teach it to others, it doesn't become an imposition.
But there's some things we need to be clear-cut and hardcore on. But and those could be things, for example, that the ummah never disagreed on. Like ontologically, that this is Allah's ruling on something in a cosmic sense. When it comes to implementing that thing, maybe overruled because of another mafsada or something like this. But you know, like this devil's in the detail, right? Everything you said, you know, being
confident in your position.
Being confident, being humble, and so forth. Like if you're saying, okay, when it comes to choosing between two established positions, then fair enough. You know, I could be right, could be wrong. But if you're saying, for example, none of them are correct.
You'd ever
the whole ummah was wrong or
no,
something
obviously,
like this,
you know.
You see what I mean? So like 5 prayers in a day, you know, 5 obligatory prayers. Plus witr.
You need a drum roll for that one.
So, you know, there has to be like an inner circle where, okay, we're not going to tolerate any any
But you s-
change in that.
Yeah, but the confidence is in the kind of public outfacing, and the humility is internal, right? So you have a position. This is why I came back to from a position of leadership, educating, guidance, and this is the position that you have. But internally, you can have. So, for example, you know, any of these discussions, there may be alternative views on it, right? And you can't say that you know each and every one, but you're firm on a position that's needed, that's fixed, that's there for everyone. But you should have enough humility to understand, well, look, I may have missed something. Or even in our discussions, we haven't looked at everything. But it doesn't change. Outwardly, it doesn't change anything. But it's a position of the heart, because otherwise what happens is people they almost become more and more confident in their view, you know, and then you lose the other side of it. That you don't want it to be to the point that you're blinkered to there may be another opinion, which is what we've all kind of suffered from that. And I'm sure we've all met people like that, or even being like that ourselves. Yeah, this is it. This is the only opinion. There is no other opinion on it. You know, and that's what we want to kind of counteract and balance.
There's one thing just to say also that you remind me of, was just the importance of being part of a scholarly community, and I think you've hinted at that. Obviously, there's in the hadith also that the hand of God is over the group, but even the word madhab, even in English we call it a school of law. The idea of a madhab was actually a collectivity in every time and place. It was structured, like you'd have a Ra'is in Baghdad, who's the Ra'is of the Hanafis. So the idea was scholarship exists in a collectivity, and that's where you get the safety from what you're saying. Learning is cultivated through exchange. Islamic tradition is one of debate. It is not one of agreement, but it's through debate you arrive at these boundaries that you're talking about. So I think one thing I always felt when I came back to the UK was that we have a lot of people studying to teach, which is excellent, but where's the space where they can cultivate that learning so they can grow? Because when you study to teach, that's where you can fall into these binaries of, I just know enough to tell them these black and white statements. But after my studying, where is my growth going to happen? I felt the gap we had in the UK was actually the absence of an ivory tower, because an ivory tower is a place where experts can fight it out, debate it out, write rudud. Like rudud have a place. It just might not be Facebook, but they have a place, you know, to refute. So the idea is
It's all online.
because learning has to be cultivated in a community of learning. And I think one thing we suffer from here, we have a lot of people studying in various pockets, but we don't have enough healthy spaces where they can come together and
Engage.
healthily debate over something. And if even with projects, you know, like the projects I think we want to talk about today, I hope these projects are sites for people to come together and discuss real serious questions. Because that's our gap. You know, if Islamic civilization, I said, if the madrasa is its great institution, if the politics is bowing down to it in Islamic history, it's the fact that Muslims have always cultivated the idea of a learned class. And I think that's where we've missed a trick, I feel, so far. We haven't institutionalized an expert space. And I hope that various forums will bring these conversations, and they will give the boundaries naturally, the boundaries of what you're referring to, of what's acceptable or not.
Hey, enjoying the show? We'll get back to it in just a moment, but I just wanted to let you know that our Ramadan appeal is live right now. I'm inviting you to share in the multiple rewards of Islam 21C. We do so much more than podcasts, so each donation you make could go towards up to 15 different projects, and many of them will be sadaqah jariyah for you, inshallah. National khutbah days, national impact campaigns, news responses, featured articles, short films, Islamic videos, infographic series, the list goes on. You can't go wrong, eh? Donate using the link below. Okay, now back to the show.
So look, let's get into the NZF kind of part of the discussion now. So I think we know a bit about your motivations and your kind of a bit of your history. We've got a mixture of the long version and the short version. But what made you take that? What made you take that jump to, okay, you feel NZF is important, you're head of research and development, but now becoming the CEO, right? How did that happen, and where do you how did you find how did that happen?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, this again. I'm going to go into a longish version. You got to interrupt me as well.
Yeah.
Because I've got a microphone here and it feels quite good just to keep talking into it.
That's why we give everyone headphones.
But what I want to point out is just that, so like I said, last 10 years has been this real thinking period for me within the fiqh tradition. Last 4 years has been a real explorative phase for me within my teaching space in Cambridge Muslim College, which, like I said, has been really, really good for me. And the summary of it for me is that fiqh, so I was reflecting recently about the Isra and Mi'raj, which we've been commemorating just last week. And what's so fascinating is that the Mi'raj is a pinnacle.
Yeah.
It's the highest moment for all of creation, for all of created being. Their highest moment is when the head of them, which is the Prophet ﷺ, leads the prophets on earth and goes where the angels can't go. That's the pinnacle. But it wasn't the end of the prophetic mission.
Yeah.
It was just the beginning of the next stage. And that next stage was the civilizational project of the Prophet ﷺ, building Islamic civilization.
Right.
Islamic civilization was the set of institutions which were a map and a model that really spread this faith across the earth. The faith didn't spread through one-on-one preaching. It spread through this civilization, which the Prophet ﷺ struggled and strove and stayed up and fought and everything to give it its institutions, because there was a logic, a convincing logic that these institutions had. The fiqh tradition for me is the map of the Prophet's civilizational da'wah, ﷺ. And so for the fiqh to be real, that's what I concluded. I believe the fiqh has a sort of activism in it, which is kind of strange, but that's my latest thinking right now. Because the fiqh, all of it, for it to be real, it needs things to be built in society. Now the fiqh imagines itself, in its cases, within a Muslim ruled setting. There's a ruler somewhere authorizing. But ultimately the institutions have to be there for the fiqh to work. So the fiqh of marriage and divorce can't actually function without the community building institutions of qada, because it's just too intrinsic. So marriage is a community institution, and community has to safeguard it. Otherwise, these are just rulings, and we're all struggling to figure out, well, how do they work? Inheritance is a part of that. Nafaqa, what the man owes the wife, and so on. And so all of fiqh then is waiting for institutions to be built. We have a duty towards these institutions. So zakat is an institution. And zakat for me is of the greatest institutions within the sacred law. It's something which I feel if we could serve it in Britain, I think it would form a foundation off the back of which many of the other institutions will be built. And so what is it that fascinates me about zakat? Really, really simple points that everyone can get to. It's for Muslims, which I always like to emphasize, that the zakat is not charity, simply. Zakat is building a tie of faith. And I think really we have to explore that, what that really means. The other thing is the aspect of zakat being local. And local is not the same as national, as we can talk about, right? Local, which all the fuqaha talk about. They've only differed on whether it's obligatory or highly recommended. But all the fiqh tradition sees zakat as fundamentally or in theory a localized tradition. So zakat is clearly building community, building belonging, building ties. It's clearly, like all the pillars, it's a foundation to a whole host of social interest. We have a duty to have people who know local needs. We have a duty to understand how to help people. We have a duty to make the brotherhood beyond a lip service. But it's faith driven. It's not activist driven. It's not that if you're into this stuff, then you can build community. It's the fact that a pillar of Muslim civilization is you have to build community. And so all of the shara, all of the fiqh is about civilization coming together, and then institutions to maintain justice, fairness, equity, and we're going to talk about how the riba fits in. And so zakat, prayer, these are just the pillars of what it means to form this community. So all I'll say is zakat for me is a microcosm of what it means for this community to come together, find strength in coming together, find meaning in coming together, find cause in coming together, and find faith in coming together. not for political reasons, not for strategic. Because when we strategize, only some people get it. Everyone else just gets on with their life.
Yeah.
But zakat is saying it's not strategy. It's if you're a Muslim, you have to come together. And so all I'll say is, I think if we were to make a zakat system in Britain, not a zakat service, a zakat system, which means that we're all a part of it, meaning the fact that I'm a Muslim means I belong to a network. Either I give in or I take out, but it gives me belonging.
It's one of the, I suppose it's one of the markers of Islam being in a particular area.
Yeah.
So you have these symbols, right, of Islam in public. You have some kind of zakah collection and distribution system. You'll have Sharia councils where people can have their disputes kind of adjudicated properly. You have the madrasas where obviously the teaching and so forth, and you have financial institutions as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was been very quiet there. That was quite
I like that.
one hell of a segue, bro. You've just been sitting there drinking his
Water.
air.
No, alhamdulillah. No, I was listening to everything that Sheikh Sohail was saying, and I think, look, it's really important when we talk about this connectivity. When we look at zakat, almost if you see it as that kind of part of this entity which is Islam, and when you talk about now about building community, it's something that it has its parts, but it's also the whole. And you see, the zakat forces us to interact in a certain way that goes further than perhaps even praying salah together, right? This is, which is really interesting when you talk about the net givers and the net receivers. And so with this, it helps to build, to solidify, to really put something solid there in terms of a structure. But also that responsibility, because you can pray right next to somebody and actually leave that prayer not knowing that person, not feeling connected to them in any way, Whereas through zakat, this is something
because you're so concentrated.
My khushu, obviously, isn't it? Whereas through zakat, there's this responsibility that you're giving something up of yourself. And at the same time, if you're somebody who's receiving and you know it's from someone in your community, what does it do in terms of building the bonds? So I really understand that element of it. But I think additional to that, there's so many other facets or so many other pieces within this community building that are currently missing from societies. So we were talking earlier about, being on our own journeys and there's some level of activism, something that motivated you. There's something that motivated myself to get into finance. And I guess from a zakat perspective, it's making sure that, no one's left behind, right? Ensuring that no one's left behind. It's almost looking after kind of the weakest or the most needy in society from one aspect. And when I look at tackling riba, it's trying to protect people from going into there, but at the same time finding a way to empower and uplift the Muslim community so that you're kind of lifting people up wholesale.
That's kind of been your vision in life, right? Helping people avoid
riba, absolutely.
and
actually
giving some kind of positive
100%
financial power to the Muslim
to
community.
empower the Muslimin, so that at the end of the day, we are we're uplifting society, we're helping people, we're empowering them in every way. Because it's funny, actually, I was looking at the du'as that we make in the morning, the adhkar of the morning, and one of them is we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to protect us from kufr and faqr, poverty. It's interesting that those two words we use together, disbelief and poverty, because most of the time, alhamdulillah, if you're in a good position, if you're eating, you're satiated, you've got a roof over your head, faith, alhamdulillah, we're okay. We may thank Allah Azza wa Jal, but we're okay. Practicing Islam isn't difficult. But when you're in need, when things are difficult for you, when you've got no other recourse for help, it can come to an issue where the decisions you make are potentially ones that have a hereafter consequence. And that means that we all have a responsibility to ensure that people aren't in that position.
100%.
And so I would see from a riba perspective that the financial system under which we all operate is oppressive. Whether we can see it or not, right? It's oppressing people. But the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal tells us anyway that you're at war with Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that should be enough for us. But you can see on a practical level, the most downtrodden in society, the ones most need of financial justice, are the ones who are treated the worst. They will have the highest levels of interest placed on them. They will have it compounded. They will come after them. And that was for me as something, wait a second, this is fundamentally wrong. But at the same time, we need to have places for Muslims as the talent grows, our Muslims, mashallah, as they become more educated. Where are they going? Where is the best of their ability? Where is the best of their education, the best of their, efforts going to? And if it's to build up all these other companies who are agnostic to raising what we're doing, then there's something wrong there. Versus having
they're
Muslim
contributing
industries.
to the system.
Exactly.
Where do most brothers from Imperial end up anyway? Financial institutions or banks or whatever.
Of course. And that's the reality of it. And we have such a kind of such a sanitized relationship with charity. We'll go in, we'll earn money in a way probably that's displeasing to Allah. And we make ourselves feel better by just giving some charity. We don't even know where it's going. We don't think about the charity. We let alone giving it with our own hands. And so this is why it was good. I was really interested to have this conversation with Sheikh Sal, that it's the two elements of it. On one side is the empowering, protecting our wealth. And it's ironic that both riba and zakat mean to increase. One is in a pure way, zakat, and riba, which is in a
Cancerous.
in a cancerous, filthy, dirty way. And then cancer is such an apt word for it, because it spreads everywhere, and then it slowly
And it spreads with the logic. You can't, but that you can't stop. I mean, the current system, there's no stopping it.
That's right.
Until it kills the host.
Exactly.
That's the cancer
and that's the reality
riba.
of it. And so it's having these two positions, understanding actually we need to come together. We need to take ownership for our community, and that's even first of all recognizing that we have a community. And this is a part of this discussion.
And welcome to our next segment, which is You've Been Served. We asked 100 people, or somebody asked 100 people, I don't know exactly if it was us or not, from people behind the scenes. 2 questions, something roughly to do with finance, for the topic of this episode. And you get scored based on how many people had the same answer as you. Or in other words, you have to guess what the most common answer is. Let's go with Sheikh Sohail first. Name something that a person might do if they found a wallet full of money.
Take it to the police station.
Take it to the police. Our survey says... Bing. That's really depressing.
So it's
that's
fourth.
the last.
It's
That's the last.
Yeah.
That's the fourth highest answer. Umar.
Yeah. Keep it.
Nobody actually said that.
They're lying.
Huh?
That's the first one, man.
Well, no, the first one is spend it.
That's kind of.
How are you going to spend it if you don't keep it?
Spending
Some
is the opposite.
esoterical.
Spending
is the opposite of keeping.
Exactly. You can't have your cake and eat it, bro.
That's wrong. That's off. That's off the chart.
What do you think?
Wait, you're going to put it in your mantelpiece if you keep it.
Yeah, exactly. You keep the wallet. You don't give it back to whoever it
Shall we
belongs.
give that to
No,
him?
man.
Let's get an outside
definitely.
observer.
Where's the audience?
We need a
What
judge.
do you want this?
Let us know in the comments if it's a boo or a yay.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, let's give him that one.
Yeah.
Back to you, Sheikh.
Look for the ID of the person and call them.
And our survey says. Okay, final guess.
If you find a wallet.
Yeah, full of money.
Yeah.
Something a person might do.
Hand it into the nearest shop.
I'll give him that.
Eh?
It says hand it into a lost and found kind of thing. So some kind of
Lost property.
lost property.
A
thing.
shop. Come on, a
Yeah,
shop.
it's
Yeah,
the
well, if
nearest
we're gonna give him the
property.
opposite, the people who are like moaning that spend it and keep it.
No.
Which
Hand
are
it in.
ontologically opposite things, obviously.
The emphasis is on the handing in.
Yeah.
Handing
so,
in, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
so
the
hand in
emphasis on
some
the
kind of
handing in.
authority.
So
or
when I
whatever.
said hand to the police, that should
Yeah.
be higher on the scale.
It should be, but I mean, these people, I don't know, these very kind of.
I think the rules have to be spelled out more.
Yeah, they're not upstanding members of
Next
society
time we do
who've been
this
filling out. This.
I know who we're dealing with here.
It was just Imraj and the Mandem. So your last answer is, so we've got spend it. Well,
Yeah.
we don't really have spend it, but you know how that works. Send it to lost and found. Give it to the police was number 4. And number 3 was give it to charity, which is probably not halal.
That's out of the fiqh books.
Yeah,
no,
it's
it
not.
is. It's out of the fiqh books, that
Yeah.
one. If you
Okay.
Yeah.
Once you do your whole announcing,
Exactly. Let them
For
know.
a year.
then you give it to charity.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
MashaAllah.
All right, second question.
Go for it.
Omar, this goes, you get first dibs on this. Name a game show that gives away lots of money.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
Oh,
Who wants to be a millionaire? Our
That was a
survey
good
says, bing, that's number 1.
man, good
You're
one.
going to say that as well, wasn't you? Okay.
The-
Sheikh Sohail.
The chase.
The Chase. Our survey says also ping. I don't know what that was, but it's there. So that's number 3.
So who's number
Back to
2?
him. Name a game show that gives away lots of money.
Deal or no deal?
Our survey says Sheikh Sohail.
This is
Name
brand.
a game show that gives away lots of money.
This is brand new one. I don't know what it's called. It's Anton Deck's giveaway. Unlimited
Big
giveaway.
takeaway or something. Big takeaway.
Takeaway giveaway.
Our survey
It's
says
brand new, so it's definitely correct. It's a correct answer.
it was probably
You're gonna have that
after
looked
this
at.
survey was made. It's probably released after the survey was made. Should we do another round? Just let them keep guessing. Go on, Omar.
Money given.
Name a game show that gives away lots of money.
Bullseye.
And our survey says
Which other game show gave you the chance of winning a speedboat?
190. That's money. That's not a boat, bro. Sheikh Sohail. Name a game show that gives away lots of money.
Catchphrase.
And our survey says catchphrase, yes. So that's number 1, first, second, third, 4th.
Okay.
So what have we got so far? There's no one on the computer thing.
Generation game.
Is that it then?
I think we're
Yeah, that was it,
exhausted.
that
Do we
was
keep
yeah.
going
No, that was
until
it.
we lose will to live?
What is it? What was the
Okay,
last?
the last one was number 2 was Wheel
Wheel
of Fortune.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Number 3 was The Chase. Number 4 was Catchphrase. Number 5 was Bruce's Price is Right.
Oh,
Nice to see it. See you nice.
Good game.
And
Good game.
number 6 was Pointless.
pointless is
Bit
the
like
one
this
I
game.
was trying to guess. Yeah.
Do you think, therefore, that zakah? Okay, I mean, there is obviously an intrinsic link between zakah and being wealthy, because zakah is, broke people don't pay zakah, basically. So, I mean, one way to, one way I think about it sometimes is we want to make people's zakah bill as big as possible, i.e., because then they're contributing more to the ummah, then and also they're financially well off. But then I think, wait a second, isn't it a bit stingy of me to just keep thinking of zakat as for zakat just 2.5% as my contribution to, or the Muslims' contribution to, the problems that we see around us. I mean, I remember this Radio 4 kind of debate, I think some moral philosophers kind of talking about, and there's a lot of non-Muslims apparently do this, that they, rather than giving a percentage of their wealth for charity, they think, what do I need to survive comfortably on? Say 20k a year, whatever. And anything they earn beyond that is given to charity. It's like the opposite of what we kind of do, right?
Yeah.
Because they're motivated by just the one Australian philosopher. He said, "Okay, look, imagine if you're walking down the street and you see by a canal you see some kid drowning or something, and you're wearing an expensive $200 suit. Would you jump in to save that child's life?" And everyone's like, "Obviously, yeah." which is how all moral philosophy questions start. Yeah, and obvious. Yeah, we talking about. Then he's like, okay, wait a second. What if that kid's really far away? So you're willing to sacrifice that $200 worth of suit to save that child's life. What if he's in a different street? Yeah, why not? Go and try and save him. What if he's in a different city, country? He's on the other side of the world. And now you start to think, oh, wait a second. I see where this is going.
Yeah.
Right? And then one of I remember when we were studying Zakat with Sheikh Haytham, for example, he after the Zakat is finished, the topic, he said, there's another thing that the fuqahas discuss, which is, what are the other, beyond Zakat, what else is obligatory, what else is due on your wealth? Because it's not just Zakat. Zakat is just normal, in normal circumstances, Zakat is the only thing that, you're obligated to pay. But if there's a crisis, if you can see someone dying in front of you, are you going to say, oh, I've given my 2.5%, right? And he was like, this is a very extreme opinion. And we were thinking, well, it sounds, why is it extreme? And he was like, because if this is truly Allah's ruling on this, that means we can't even have chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because this is beyond our needs. If you can, and if we were on the other side, if we were on the receiving side, we would certainly want people to hold this position that, look, if there's literally people are dying of preventable diseases, of simple things that we can pay, it's something that if we start thinking about it, we'll start agreeing with the logic morally, but we'll start trying to silence that voice inside us that brings us kind of moral anxiety. It's a kind of like a coping mechanism. There's a really good book called Vital Lies, Simple Truths, The Psychology of Self-Deception. I forgot who wrote it. Maybe we'll put it on screen now. But he talks about how even kind of in our central nervous system, the same neural pathways, the same neuromodulators are employed when it as they are in, like, if you're in a massive accident, you break your arm or whatever, your pain sensation is blocked out. Those same pathways are employed when it comes to moral anxiety and pain.
Yeah.
That's why we'd rather automatically we stop thinking about that thing. That's why when the Oxfam or NZF or whatever advert comes up on your screen saying, look, this person is dying of hunger, you can help them, we'd automatically rather just change the channel or think about something else. It's a kind of reflexive thing that we will actually reduce the volume of that thing in our heads. And it's really the reason I'm saying this is because Zakat, to me, it feels like we should be giving much more than just our Zakat, right? And Zakat feels like just the bare minimum safety net, to bring people up, to stop them literally kind of dying of hunger and thirst, or things that are very, very important, very crucial and urgent. But we should expect our community and ourselves to go way beyond that. So we have like a Zakat, which is the safety net as a community, and then encourage for projects, for da'wah, for all kinds of things, right? We have this National Sadaqah Foundation, or whatever. What do you think? I mean, that's where I feel a bit of. It's not like maybe I'm not saying it's like a fiqh argument or whatever, because technically speaking, it's understandable. Most fuqaha would say, go with the closest first and so on. But I'm talking about the spirit of zakat. It just seems qualitatively that this should be for the most dire first, but those who are close, those who are our local communities, we need something beyond zakat for their needs.
Can I say something on this actually? I was going to say, look,
then I'll jump in afterwards.
Yeah,
100% as well. Yeah.
One thing I've noticed around, from my experience in the city and working with different professionals, and even actually just generally the charity sector, is this thing that, and even being involved a bit of fundraising, is the first question pretty much always asked is this zakat eligible? Right? Is this zakat? Whatever, subhanAllah, you will see someone, and it's come back to this point, you're saying that if someone's there in front of you that needs help, why is your automatic response, is this zakat eligible? And I think it's symptomatic of a wider issue of how we see wealth and our almost greed or lust for it. This is the reality of it, that we want it and it doesn't matter how we get it. And so we kind of minimize all of our charity to zakat, and we try and force everything through zakat. And this is the problem, really, because if we say that we're charitable people, and speaking to different charities, the majority of the money that they raise is zakat, right? But let's just say,
Is that true?
Yeah, they say at least 50 to 60%. A lot of the
Wow.
the big charities.
I mean, it makes sense
zakat.
for you because your name is.
But yeah, a lot
that's quite depressing, man.
exactly. So if you think about it, right, and we say 2.5% is zakat, let's just say it's equal. Does that mean as a community, the max amount of charity that we give is 5%? There's something wrong there, because we're supposed to be people who give. And so this is what I'm saying is our relationship with money and wealth has now become that we really hold on to it, right? That we want to gather it. And so then when an opportunity for charity comes, is it zakatable? And the response of those who work in the sector, I think, reflects that as well. That it's been, okay, well, we know that they're going to give us money. And this is not about NZF. I'm saying generally the response has been, let's find those projects and how do we ensure, because there is khair in some of these projects, to actually, wait a second, we can use zakat because we know it's coming. It allows us to build institutions and infrastructure. And there's something.
People ask us as well, Psalm 23 sometimes, can we give zakat? I was like, no, what the hell is wrong with you?
But you see what you can see why though, isn't it? Because they've just been thought that their charity, they've made zakat and sadaqah synonymous, and actually it's not the same in that point of view. From that point of view,
Well, it is maybe in some classical epistemology.
but yeah, you know what I mean, though, isn't it?
But,
That the zakat becomes our own interaction with charity.
yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem.
If I can just take another angle though, but I mean, confirming whatever you've said, but just to hit one thing before we go further, which is just that zakat, so all of the 5 pillars, they have something in common, which is that they are doable. They are little in comparative effort. Like the obligatory prayers, the only difficulty is getting into the habit. It's like 15 minutes a day. The idea of the fard is it's a little bit in effort and it's huge in consequence. That's why they're the greatest acts. That's their barakah. That's the blessing in them. And so we have to understand, why did the sacred law make zakat not just a small amount in comparison, but it's not on all of your wealth, as the way the fiqh described the items on which zakat is on. It's only the items which are fundamental to human economies, things that people are trying to grow. So it never comes after your home, however many homes you have. It's not coming after your cars, however many cars you have. Like, it's really a very specific institution coming after, if you're a farmer, just a portion of your growth. If you're an animal herder, just one of your babies that your cows keep producing every year. It should feel like a haircut. You snip it, but it's always coming.
Yeah.
And so all the rules of zakat are constructed in such a way that it shouldn't be threatening. It's something that should be easy to do, but when you systematize it, it's great in consequence. And I think at some level we have to celebrate that as well, because although we're talking about people who want to squeeze things into zakat, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of our community don't pay zakat. And so the idea is, what about them? So the idea is we have to emphasize the ease of it. I was at a khutbah last week, and he exactly gave this point, which was a lady called him up saying, please speak to my husband, he doesn't pray. When he spoke to the husband, he said, why don't you pray? Like, when you come back from work or something. And the guy said, because Isha has 17 rakats, I just can't do it. And then he told them, no, just do the 4, so he kind of broke it down to the fard. And then he said the man started praying, then he became talib, one of those rags to riches stories.
Mashallah.
But it started by focusing on the fard. And so we kind of have to have that message. There's a wisdom in the sacred law. And if we could reach the people who don't pay, and the other reason why people don't pay is, it seems so little. They feel like, well, I give to my mosque, or I do X, or I do Y. That's why we have to celebrate the ease of zakat, and we have to have a discourse on the purpose of zakat, because we have to show people that it is mubarak. You know, in the words of the Holy Quran, one seed makes 700. Zakat is blessed, and it's blessed for you, and we have to emphasize the blessings for the giver. But it's growth. You know, it means growth. It's growth for the community. I mean, the Muslim community in Britain, we have a disproportionate number of Muslims in prison. Right, 5% Muslim, public population, about 20% prison population. A lot of that is to do with what Umar was saying. It's that faqr, being poverty, being underprivileged, not having the same access to financial advice, to literacy, financial literacy and other things, leads to bad choices. We have to solve that. We have about 50% of Muslims who are technically, by definition, in poverty. There's something in the barakah of zakat, which it's easy, it's doable, it's not threatening, and if we all did it, we can address really serious issues. So I don't want to pass it over by saying because it's easy, let's go somewhere else. It's that there's something in the fard of it that we haven't owned yet as a community. It's a thing you do if you feel like it, and again, it's very sterile. Like you send it off. It's not like prayer. Prayer and zakat, salat and zakat are the two big pillars, right, that come again and again. Salat, you have a sense of, I had a good prayer and a bad prayer. I'm trying to work on my prayer. Zakat is such a sterile thing. Where's the equivalence? And the equivalence is a narrative we all have a duty to build about what it's building. Belonging, community, care, responsibility. Those are the idea of zakat is those are our kids in prison. Those are our nephews making bad choices. That's all in the narrative building. What is zakat teaching us? I just want to say we got to grab that as well, in addition to the extra.
Is that really the purpose of zakat, or some of the positive consequences of zakat? Because I'm always thinking of, the illah or hikmah, Is it the actual cause of a particular ruling, the thing that Allah intended to, as from a legislative perspective, or is it one of the many wisdoms that come about from, like salah? People are like, oh yes, good exercise, and salah brings all the community together, and it lets you clear your mind out of when you're kind of stressed out or busy or whatever. Salah, it does all of those excellent things, but is that the purpose of salah?
So for me, I'd almost answer yes on the community part of salat. I just wrote a draft article just yesterday, actually, for an academic blog on this, that when you look at salat through a fiqh book, we always complain there's no section on fiqh saying please concentrate. There's no spirituality in a fiqh discourse. But there's something else that's really central, and it's salat as a social pillar. If you look at the fiqh book of fiqh from beginning to end of Kitab al-Salat, there's no doubt that salat is the pillar of Muslim civilization. And we're sitting next to a mosque, and I always like to emphasize, we can't, which way does it go? We can't overestimate. I always get them mixed up. We can't overestimate, or is it underestimate?
Don't you tell us the sentence?
It might be setting up for a double negative. We can't we have to carry the one.
Let me
underestimate normally is used.
Yeah. The point is the power of the mosque.
Yeah.
It's symbolic why the mosque was the first thing the Prophet ﷺ built in Medina. Again, built meaning dedicated a space for the mosque, because the mosque is not just about your spiritual personal thing. It's about finding community. Again, imagine if you go back 30, 40 years, it's an immigrant community.
Yeah.
We came, people came to this country just to make a living, and they're strangers, they don't know anybody. The mosque is the first place which is a faith hub, meaning I'm here because I'm a Muslim and I know you because you're a Muslim. And so the mosque becomes the melting pot of a Muslim identity. That's why over time all the charities are around the mosque, and all the restaurants around the mosque, and all the halal meat is around the mosque. And in every traditional Muslim civilization, the market, the biggest market, is next to the central mosque. So the idea is prayer is society building, and there's no doubt about it.
The mosque is.
Well, the mosque is the institution of the prayer, because the prayer,
you can
to
argue,
establish prayer, you're meant to establish the mosque. To establish prayer, you have to pray together. If you're in a family, you pray together. You're at work, you pray together. You're in a city, you pray together. And then Jum'ah is the pinnacle. Where in Jum'ah, in the classical fiqh, there's meant to be one Jum'ah per town. That's like a hardcore idea.
Yeah.
And so it's really is saying, everybody, I don't care if you're Salafi, Sunni, whatever, you're going to pray behind one imam, otherwise your prayer is invalid. And so all of the rules of salat, if you really think about it from beginning to end, it's different forms of bringing community together under God. And so if you look at it through the whole fiqh, there's no doubt that zakat really is the brother of salat. If salat is really bringing you together in a physical space, that you are a community, you are a brotherhood. I personally feel that we might not have had these charities if there were no mosques. So the idea is, because a mosque was built by an immigrant community, the kids had a place to study Quran and to get a sense of identity, off the back of which we are the benefactor, we are the recipients of this grace, and the grace comes from the mosque. And so I just want to, it's interesting, I always get this mixed up, the power of the mosque.
Yeah.
And
underestimate.
Yeah, exactly. So, and so for me, there's no way to not read zakat like this. Zakat is making sure the community you build in the mosque is not lip service, but there's a financial space now that you're all sharing. By definition, by the fact that you're praying together, you have to look after each other. You have to know about each other. People shouldn't suffer in silence. Again, the Quran highlights who's the most worthy of our sadaqah. It's the people that don't ask. How on earth are you going to do that without building community? So for me, it's almost categoric. You cannot read the fiqh without seeing zakat as a community building institution. That's where the local comes in.
So why can't it just be generally like the masjid? The masjid is an institution. It has the prayer, but it also has, community come together, children, people resolving disputes, military strategizing, whatever. Likewise,
Soup kitchen.
Likewise, giving is an institution, and zakah is like the prayer, like it's a very specific, highly regulated thing. But don't forget all of these other things. I think we're saying similar things, but from a different angle.
Yeah, I'm completely with you.
Yeah.
Why do we need to force X, Y, Z into zakah when we can say no? Zakah is the very specific, strict right of Allah and right of specific people. Whereas don't limit the use of your mosque just to prayer. Don't limit use of your giving just to zakah. That's what I think.
I guess also the point Sal was making is very important, that there are many people who don't even give zakat. And so it's a bit like the one who isn't praying at all. You start with the fard because that's the immediate obligation. And so it's kind of reconnecting them with that obligation, because it's an obligation first and foremost. And then it's, well, look, what's the purpose of it? Maybe they'll begin to understand. And then also those who already engage, for example, that person who's already praying, can he improve his prayer? And so you're building on the zakat from there. But it has to be a block as part of a wider block. And this is why we say the zakat is one element of it. Sadaqah, waqf, and even how you do commerce and business.
Yeah.
All of it. It's interesting. The point you made earlier at the beginning, you go, it's almost as if we want people to do really well, so we create lots of zakat. I would argue, actually, I think of it the other way around, that we get to a point where there aren't people that we need to give zakat to, almost, from one element of it. If you take it from, those who are most needy. And this is why kind of giving them kind of an honorable way of life where they're working and they don't need to get zakat. So it's kind of different the way you look at it, because definitely as an institution, as far as we want to give it. And they may even get to a point where we have it, but we have no one to give it to. So it's different ways of looking at it, but it's definitely a block, and it's probably, I guess, a foundational block, which is why you're probably emphasizing it, from that point of view. But we do need the other blocks.
There's no doubt. And one thing this also reminded me of is, again, it's just seeing, again, prayer and zakat as foundational institutions. What's interesting in Islamic history, again, the prayer in the beginning is exactly as you said. It was where the armies used to meet in the very early mosques of Kufa and Basra, before they used to go, eastwards. So the idea was, it really was a hub of many sorts. The first madrasa, I said, as this cool word, of the first law colleges were in the mosque. Then they became colleges.
Yeah.
So the mosque was, as far as I understand, was the birthplace of public social serving institutions. People formed them in mosques and then they became separate. And my suspicion is zakat is similar, Because when you look at Islamic history, when I met with Umar last time, it was quite funny that everyone who tells a historical story about how great zakat was, they stop at Umar ibn Abdul Aziz normally. You don't really hear, all the great stories are way in the past.
Yeah.
Is it because zakat wasn't great afterwards? No, I don't think so. But I think it's just like we said, it made a foundation of what it means to be in community, look out for each other, and to be well managed in your charity to build the community. Off the back of that, many great institutions, primarily the Waqf, took over, meaning they were the fundamental feature of Islamic civilization. But they need a peg, they need an idea for people to get the sense of the power of charity, the parity of community development through duty.
Yeah.
So my suspicion is that if we could get zakat as a system here that people really feel a part of, they feel the change, they feel the responsibility it teaches them, they feel that we're helping our youngsters, we have a more sense of ownership for our own, which is what the zakat is saying. Naturally, it gives energy then. For how about the awqaf? How about a waqf for this and a charity for that and a dedication for this? That's why I said that the pillars are blessed. And my hope is, zakat isn't everything, but my hope is if we can get it into people's sense of what it is, it will just drive what you guys are talking about, a charitable revolution in our communities. Because then when they really get a sense of the power of giving and the power of what they can leave behind, of legacy.
Hey, it's me again. Just had a thought, and I was wondering, how many of you watching this podcast know that Unscripted is just one of our products? Did you know that we have 15 different projects, each working towards our vision to see every Muslim confident impacting the world, each in a unique and different way? If you didn't know this, then where have you been? We do this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and even this. If you didn't know that, then I know what's wrong. You're not connected to us properly. You're missing out on all our updates. No problem. The simple fix is you need to get onto our mailing list quick and follow us on Telegram, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, not just on YouTube. Hold on. How many of you have subscribed to us here? Come on, how else are you going to catch all the other podcasts, short films, reminders and series that we produce on here? Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon and go to the description right now to join us on our other platforms to catch all the non-video projects that we do all year round.
I'm smiling because I actually use zakat as a benchmark when I'm talking about the purity of our income. And I speak to people and I say, of your wealth, how much of it is actually zakatable? That if we consider how you've built your money and the lifestyle that you lead, because there were people who would speak to, subhanAllah, they'd have huge houses, lots of nice cars, going on lots of holidays, yet their zakat actually, by a technical definition, would be zero. Because it's all in crypto. It's all predicated on debt. It's all predicated on debt. And so if we say, if you owe money, then actually they have more right to your zakat and so on. And you actually realize, wait a second, the two should go hand in hand because Allah is pure and He loves what's pure. And actually, if you think that, wait a second, you're giving something that belongs to Allah, can you give Him something that was made in a illegal or a haram way or isn't acceptable to Allah because it's not done in the correct way? And so when it comes down to it, somebody who could on the face of it seem to have lots of wealth, they're paupers. Actually, they are the ones who are poor because they can't even give zakat. And someone who has much less money, but they're able to give zakat. And so this is why it's the lifestyles that we lead, the debt-based lifestyles that we have. You imagine that it disconnects you from fulfilling an obligation. Let alone then the same people when they want to go for Hajj and they say they can't go for Hajj because they're in debt. So obviously the scholars will give them different rulings to allow them to do these things. But from a pure perspective, when you look at it, actually, wait a second, if you're in debt, you shouldn't. That person has more right to your money that's earned, your huge house that you're living in and all of this. It's all debt. So what do you actually have? And you've been cut off from fulfilling these obligations, subhanAllah. So it's interesting because I use zakat as an anchor to say, actually, when you look at your wealth, how much of it is actually zakat?
How much of it is really yours?
Exactly.
That's what you're getting
exactly. And so just to get them to think about it,
I think we have to explore this debt thing now, just because. So you've hinted at it, but I'd like you to maybe present it in a complete way now, which is that the Holy Quran clearly sets zakat against riba in an opposition.
Yes.
Quranic verse in وَمَا أَتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ وَمَا أَتَيْتُم مِّن رِبَّا لِيَرْبُوَ فِي أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ فَلَا يَرْبُو عِندَ اللَّهِ. Whatever you give of riba or usury, so it can grow through the wealth of people, it has no growth with God. وَمَا آتَيْتُم مِّن زَكَاةٍ تُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُضْعِفُونَ. But what you give of zakat, seeking God's being, that's Asma Sifat translation there. That's another podcast.
Yeah.
There.
It's okay, we'll dub over it.
That those are the ones that really multiply. So just to be really explicit for the audience, that the Quran is explicitly setting zakat against riba.
Yeah.
And both of them, people do it seeking growth. And the Quran is explicit that riba has no growth with God.
That's right.
And zakat has multiplied growth with God.
Is that zakat in that context, the tafsir, is that referring to zakat we understand today, or is that referring to...
Oh, that's a sharp question, that one. Because...
Not just a pretty face, you know.
Some would say not even that.
That's cool. It's an excellent question, just because the surah is unless I'm mistaken, Surah Ra'd, which is Meccan. And so you've talked about this earlier, this interplay of zakat and sadaqah within the Holy Quran. So zakat here in this verse probably is charity in general.
Yeah.
There was a sense of obligatory charity since the earliest Meccan revelations, that you owe a duty of care to the needy. But as institutionalized, the way we've been talking today, that was in Medina.
Well, I'm always kind of careful of anachronisms and trying to put.
No, that was a very very sharp.
But I mean, it's very deep.
But the underlying point is.
But I wanted to let you really flesh it out for ourselves, and certainly for people listening as well. What are the ways that riba and zakat are opposites from your angle? Because what I loved, because me and Umar, we first met virtually for this sort of collaborative meeting. Hi, I'm Wahid. I'm NZF, and he. And he introduced his work within like 30 seconds, and I became his fan like within 30 seconds. Don't know if he does that within all of his work meetings, or was that just a one-off fluke?
You get a close-up of his face.
But blushing. He was like, I don't remember how he said it, but it was like, so I've run Wahid.
That's the thing with these corporate types. They have the elevator pitch on.
But his pitch was, I'm here to protect people against an oppressive system. It wasn't about I'm helping people invest their money. And as soon as he said that, I was like, you know what? I'm here to help people realize their duty so they can be protected against an oppressive system.
Hashtag not sponsored.
I didn't say that, but I was like, wow, that's how I'd love to make my 30-second pitch. Yeah. And so there's an opposition in riba and zakat, and just your investment work and the zakat building, they are intrinsically tied. But just in your sense, how would you convey this opposition? And you've talked about debt, because I think that's central here.
Absolutely. It's look, I think at the heart of it is, first of all, protecting people from falling foul of this oppressive system, really bringing people back to what really is of value. And this is, when we're talking about zakat or sadaqah, this is based on assets or equity, something real. And what we live in a time where debt has been made to seem like it's an asset or it's something of value. And that's what everyone's falling into. And so on one end, you have the people right at the top who base their success on debt, and they live a life predicated on debt. And on the other end of the scale, you have those people who live day to day based on debt. And so the system as a whole is one that only benefits those who are really wealthy, actually. And it just pushes and applies pressure on those who are most in need of help. And you may not even realize it. You get caught up in the system, and it's, subhanAllah, you see with other forms of sin, like if someone drinks, we'll call them out straight away. If someone eats haram, you'll call them out straight away. But we've become so blasé to riba that someone will say, yeah, I've got this mortgage, or I bought my car on finance, or I work in this institution, as if it doesn't make it matter. But these are the institutions that create money out of nothing, that devalue what you have. People are talking about inflation and the impact of inflation. There's a direct correlation between inflation and interest. The houses that we're trying to live in, and everyone's talking about getting a halal mortgage and so on and so forth. But actually, the reason that the houses are so expensive and out of your reach is because of credit supply and interest. This is our kind of first world interaction with interest, and it's oppressive. Let alone what it does to the rest of the world, the developing world. That you have countries, subhanAllah, who make more than enough in terms of wealth to look after the most impoverished in their countries, in their societies. But because of interest, they're so busy just paying back the interest on debts that they've had that they're never able to get out of it. And so the entire financial ecosystem is based on selling you something that you think you need, and so what's a want becomes a need, and then giving you the ability to get it, and then tying you down and effectively enslaving you through it. And so what we see is not actual freedom, it's enslavement. And how many people do you speak to? I'd love to be able to do this, but I've got to pay my mortgage. And you don't even... The problem is, and then the other side of this is depression. Why is depression so high in places like where we are? And especially in men, actually. The rates of depression is much higher in men than even in women. Because this kind of keeping up with the Joneses, we have to have a certain type of house that we live in. So there's nothing saying that we have to go live there.
New glasses.
Yeah, exactly. New hairstyle. So you put yourself under pressure to aspire to something, and that then drives you mad. Subhanallah. And so this is exactly the piling up, and this is it. You see, and we're paying into this system, we're flowing into this system, and this is the issue with it. And this is why we talk about zakat, subhanAllah, and why I love the two. That we know the incident or the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where the person who was the guardian of the orphan, and he came to him, and the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what are you doing with the wealth of the orphan? The guardian said, I'm not doing anything. And the Prophet ﷺ said, invest it, or it will be, reduced by zakat. So on one hand, it's talking about investing, growing in a pure way. And the other is also about actually, even the wealth of an orphan has an obligation of zakat on it. And this is important for us to know because all our pockets of money have an obligation on them. And so this thing about investing and growing, and actually, if money is circulating in society in the right way, it creates jobs, it creates honor for people. Instead of having this thing where we just give charity, and actually, the person who's asking for charity, they may be in a difficult situation. And the Prophet even said the person who's asking for it is better that they work. So for you as being someone who supplies work and allows them to earn their money in an honest way, isn't that much better? And from the higher aims of the Sharia?
Beautiful.
So zakat accelerates the natural decay of anything that, and that's the one link between zakat and riba. Tariq Diwani's book, the first chapter, The Problem with Interest. It's really confusing in the first few pages. Like, why is he's talking about the first law of thermodynamics, or second law, one of the laws of thermodynamics, that the universe tends towards chaos. Everything tends towards decay, entropy increases, right? So he's like, the riba is so out of place in this universe that it's something by virtue of its own self increases rather than decays, right? Any natural wealth that you have to actually input energy into the system in order to preserve it. Otherwise, it will just decay. The sheep, the livestock will just wander off. The harvest, the grains would decay. Obviously, the harvest would just wither away. You have to input energy just to keep it up at a fair level. And zakah is eating away at that, almost giving you an imperative to not hold wealth.
Exactly.
Right, to actually invest it, to provide capital, to provide loans, good loans, halal loans for people, trying to lift themselves out of poverty. So there's just one thing that came to my mind in terms of the connection between zakat and riba. So one is an increase via decrease, the literal decrease, leading to a cosmic increase. And one thing is the riba is not to point at you, but it's like
Thanks, bro.
I have to point this out. It's not like riba versus zakat here. We're both on the same
Someone's going
side.
to lose today.
So riba is a literal attempt at an increase, but cosmically,
And this was the point I was
decrease.
actually making earlier, that actually a vision we'd have. It was, imagine if we didn't have, or there wasn't anybody who was eligible for zakat, because you've deployed your money in such a way that it's taken care of all of the different categories. Can you imagine something like that? Subhanallah. So the person where you would have given them zakat because they need help, actually you've employed them now.
Yeah.
And so there's somebody who receives it. It's just, and this is how the two always go hand in hand. But Allah Azza wa Jal knows us better than we know ourselves.
Well,
and even,
give a man a fish.
yeah, exactly. Very ironic.
Etc.
Yeah. Not just saying that because we're in Tower Hamlets. Right. So it's, this concept of actually, you maybe throw me off my point there completely now.
Good at that.
Yeah, just like I had. But, the zakat actually taking people away from that if they are benefiting from money being spent in the right way, all of it being deployed in the way that it should, subhanAllah. And then actually, the point I was going to make was that Allah Azza wa Jal knows our nature better than we know ourselves. And even in the verses of riba in Surah Baqarah, where Allah Azza wa Jal talks about the prohibition of riba, all the preceding verses are to do with charity, actually, and knowing your relationship with wealth, and it not being something that enters into your heart, and actually what's better for you is the hereafter. So it's kind of preparing you for it. But at the end of the day, if this doesn't sway you, then here are the rules.
Yeah.
And so even when we talk about, at the end of the day, giving to all of these causes, doesn't matter how emotional the arguments, doesn't matter how well thought out the arguments, ultimately, look, it's still a responsibility, it's still a fard, so you have to give it,
Yeah, this is one thing you remind me of in this chat as well. It's a thread from the way that we started, which was just, we owe a duty to ourselves and to the public that we're serving to think really deeply about the wisdom and the meaning behind the shara'i'. We talked about it in zakat. It's, if you really think about the zakat through the classical fiqh, through the tradition, you really get a sense of what it's creating, what it's building. And the same with riba, because if you look at zakat as 2.5%, it's nothing, it's not significant, it's sterile, you get it out if you want, otherwise whatever. Riba's the same. It's, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, I'm just getting a house, it's just a little bit, I'm not feeling impressed, I'm feeling empowered, look at the free world. It's very easy to have a personal view which doesn't see any of this stuff. You feel like you're top of the world. But we need to have a systems view. And that's our duty as people who serve the sacred law, people who serve the community. Within all of the shara'i', this is what I'm saying, all of the fiqh, all of the sacred law is a vision for society. Yeah. And that's why all of the fiqh pushes to something, in my most recent thoughts, I'm calling a sort of activism, that you have to have a care about the world and a narrative for the world. Otherwise, the riba is too easy to pass off as not harmful. That was that riba, that isn't this riba.
Yeah.
Whereas this riba is the nastiest of all the ribas because it's systematized. And the first time it struck me was, again, when I was doing my Islamic law course at Imperial College. Just when
Islamic
I was...
law course in Imperial College.
I was going to say...
Wait a second.
And he did...
Let's double check that CV again. It's late. It's
the
late.
business and information
Should I pass
systems in
this
a
on?
man.
No,
Let's just cut it. Let's cut that bit out.
I should cut that point. At Cambridge Muslim College, which is a very imperial kind of college. Yeah. So when we really went into riba and I really did my readings and thinking of how to present it, you really get a very simple sense of how destructive the current system is, like a systems view. Because the idea is that in our modern economy, money is born with a greater debt than the amount of money. Yeah. So as we produce money in the economy, there's a much greater debt produced as that money is brought into the economy. That's a social pressure. Because what does it mean? It means the people who make up that economy are under the pressure to pay off debt, to monetize the world, to monetize relationships, to pay off debt. To
continually increase.
But then more money will come with more debt. And that's why it's a cancer. That's why it's so important to have a systems view of riba. because you can't separate it from any of our problems in the world today. If you think about the environment, how do you solve the problem of the environment? It's not simply by preaching love of trees and love of animals, because however much you tell people to love trees and animals, debt is telling people you have to monetize the world. You are pressurized because you've got kids to feed, you have a house to... It's just survival in a debt economy means you got to monetize the world, because if you cut the trees, you get money out of it. A tree sitting there isn't useful to pay off your debt. And so even in the environment is under the burden of riba.
Yeah.
And there's no actual solution to this, because the riba will continue until it consumes. Human relations, that's what I also read. Human relations are under the burden of riba, because if you look in the old world, right? I mean, old world meaning when we were kids, even, or just earlier.
Yeah.
If you have to go and do something, the neighbors look after your kids. It's easy.
Yeah.
Now we want to monetize that with babysitting and childcare is a really big business. It was not a business, some decades ago. And I'm not saying people are evil for doing that. It's the pressure of, again, riba wants to monetize human relations.
Yeah.
It wants to pit us against each other. Tutoring's a huge business. It wasn't, in the older, just go back some decades. It was just you sit with your uncle or you get a friend. It was part of community. And that's where zakat, when we said it builds community, that's all the growth you get. All these wonderful services of being in community. Riba is the anti-community. And that's what I realized. In very simple layman's terms. It will monetize your relationships. It will break up your homes. It will attack the environment.
Atomizes.
Because it atomizes. That's exactly, riba is atomizing, and zakat is bringing together. And that's why I think it's really important that we just give people a systems view of the sacred law. Otherwise, you don't get it. It looks like it doesn't apply to us.
Yeah.
And this thing about actually activism is it's a really good point to make, because now even I've seen it in the dawah, and when we talk about getting people more involved, engaged in their communities, I've seen it like a trend especially in the last 5 years, where doing some sort of good work, you ask people to do something, you get the question back, what's in it for me? This was unheard of. I'm trying not to sound nostalgic or we came from some sort of golden era, but genuinely, I think there's an issue of ISOCs and challenges with those, etc. But just now, everything, you're right, is trying to be monetized. But you can get whatever you want right now through the proliferation of things like Klarna and PayPal credit.
Oh, that's really good.
Right?
0%.
Right. So you can get whatever you want right now, but then actually you want more.
Yeah.
Because suddenly that thing that you couldn't get before, where you'd save up for, now you can get it, but you want more, so you need more money. And so you start to see everything through a transactionary lens, and you try to monetize all of these relationships.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely right, because even though it's 0%, if you read it, the number of people who actually go outside of the 0% is very high. And they have that clause, if you miss one payment, 30%.
Yeah.
And they know it. They know human behavior.
I'm conscious of time. I've got one question that remains, and it's a loaded question. Yeah. So be careful how you answer this.
No
one.
pun intended with loaded, yeah.
All right. Okay. You mentioned, the masjid. Okay, the masjid is such a beacon of and a symbol of Islam. It's so many important community building activities, that the civilizational building activities. Why can't we give zakah to build a masjid? I think you see where I'm going. I mean, I'm not saying what as in like a rhetorical question, but what do you think some of the wisdoms are in the Sharia of having such a, probably the most important public symbol of Islam? And as far as I know, I don't know ijma or whatever, but generally speaking, that what we always grew up hearing was,
pay for it,
you can't, the masjid, you can't pay zakah towards a masjid. Zakah is very specific, very strict categories. Masjid is.
If he can't pay for it from zakah, I'll give you an interest-free loan.
For how many months?
Is the loaded the follow-up part, like what he really wants after the mosque? Is that
Some sort of funding, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the straightforward answer, yeah, within the classical fiqh, it's very, very hard to justify spending the zakat on any of these projects, because the zakat is about people, investing in people, and again, the way I'm going to say it in the way that I've been discussing it today, it's about building community. So that's what it's building ties of care. There was a really wonderful passage we just did yesterday in a lesson I was in, which was it was a Hanafi book, why it's disliked to take the zakat abroad unless it's for within the Hanafi fiqh. You can take it abroad if you think people are in greater need or your family. Otherwise, it's disliked. And when he explained why it's disliked, he said, "Lima fihi min tafwid haqq al-jiwar." He says because you squander a right, and the right is the right of neighborliness, which is a duty you owe. So the idea is zakat is about human beings, building those ties, building the community, and it's not about enriching the rich, because as soon as you get into zakat for building, you are then it becomes circulated within the rich. Because my friend here, for example, will keep building mosques. I'm the zakat guy. I'll keep feeding him all the money. Yeah, exactly. So the idea is, as soon as that's what's so tricky within the zakat. When it becomes institutional, it's very easy for it to circulate amongst project people.
Yeah.
And that's why the rules of zakat, in their very restricted rules, they just protect the wealth, and therefore they protect the project. That's the bottom. The other thing about the mosque as well, the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ, it was exceedingly simple. There was no carpet, there were no concrete pillars. And so you could build the most, again, it's one of those tricks, right? I get all the money, my man builds the marble mosque, and he gets all the cut. Mosque, to do all the fancy things, all the great things mosques need to do, it's just literally a space.
Yeah.
It doesn't need a carpet, it doesn't need the concrete pillars. It's just a space which no human being can claim to own. This is the mosque. As soon as you claim to own it, this is not a mosque. And so it's rather the significance that we have to create, not all the economies that we build around it.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. Actually, what zakat enables you to do is build a jama'ah,
Correct.
and not the building. And because you can have a building that's empty, and
Yeah,
zakat
correct.
really protects you from that. It's actually building the people that bring them to the mosque, and then the mosque is the second institution that then allows you to do it.
Because the thing, I was in a mosque the other day, and people were there, and I said, well, there's a lot of people outside that don't think it's worth their while coming to the mosque. Zakat is meant to facilitate that, because the idea, again, of these pillars is they cast a very wide net. That if you're in need, and you believe that there's one God and Muhammad is his messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam, we owe you a duty of care. So the zakat is a very wide net of belonging. And so it's just this... it's this sense of wide welcome that I think that we have to emphasize by building the Jama'ah. It's not my narrow group, it's not my ideology, and it's not my building friends who are building great things. It's just we all are in this together, and whoever wants to join is welcome, and we will look after you. Again, this is the civilizational da'wah. That if it's a system, it's nice to belong to. You feel really proud to belong to a system, and you want people to come and join. So there's people who don't feel they find what they want in the mosque. Let the zakat bring them, and then let them find the mosque in the process.
What do you mean the zakat to bring people?
Yeah, this is interesting, because what I'm fascinated by is if we can make mosques centers for financial care. This is an interest of mine that I'd like to explore through the work that I'm doing right now. Because the idea is, if we're talking about localized zakat, again, why is the zakat local? It's that it's not just a transaction of money. It's when I come to get it, I have to meet someone. And that someone is in a place. And that place might have a place of prayer. It might have a place of food. So I was in Bradford with one of our partners, Bradford Foundation Trust. And what was so amazing was they work a lot with these refugee communities, because the Home Office sends a lot of them to Bradford because it's cheaper for them to house them there. And I was there observing a case. So there was two families came. They came from Iraq. They came in a very scary journey here. At knife point, actually, when they realized there was a boat and this, and that they didn't want to come, but they were forced to come. It was a very odd, traumatic journey. They had just come. They had kids. So the Home Office gives them a hotel sort of room, and food, and that's it. And so they came to this center to get some vouchers so they could do some shopping, buy some clothes and some food. And so you come to this center because you have a need. But once you come there, the center has other services. And they said, because they've come as strangers in a hotel, they don't know anyone, and they're scared, and they have children. And so the center says, like I was there, they said, oh, we have a mother and children's group on Thursdays, why don't you come and then you can meet people. So the idea is zakat is part of an infrastructure of faith services. And so for local zakat to really have its power, it should be that you come for need.
Local or Bradford.
And you come for your need, but you find a community. You find prayer. You find lessons. You find food. You find brotherhood. You aren't alone. All of this is part of, for me, the wisdom of zakat and the rules of zakat. And so for me, if having the
so
zakat...
people who are obviously, would be considered part of the zakat categories are the fuqara or masakin. It's not like you're paying people to come to the mosque. Just so as a disclaimer there.
But also, you look at the great kind of counter check and balance it provides. If someone's part of the community, then you also see that if you give them zakat, how they're actually spending it, right? This is a because this is a big criticism, isn't that? If you give people zakat, basically with a nice
new car, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see that actually how they're going about their business.
You're right.
They're in the community, But the same token, they will also see that actually, if there's someone else who's more in need of them as well, that they're able to then actually say, wait a second, I don't need as much zakat. And this will only come, and we're also protecting them as well, their honor. Allah Azza wa Jal protect us, and we're talking about refugees. And I remember this thing they're saying now about the Ukrainians, that they're not coming from a war, from people who are destitute. They're from middle class families, etc., and suddenly they don't have anything. But this is happening in the Muslim world. But it could happen to any of us. They say that most people are only 3 paychecks away from being kicked out of their house. So it could happen to anyone. So imagine from being that person where you're the breadwinner, where you're providing for your family, suddenly you need to ask for money. Like how that must feel, subhanAllah. Now, if there's any way in which you can kind of protect someone from that, then surely it's going to be through a mechanism where you know what's happening around you. And we were saying this earlier, actually, one of the discussions Sahel and myself had was that when we were younger, we were growing up, and we'd go to each other's, people's houses. Even as a child, you knew which of the families were more well off than others. You had this sense of which families weren't doing as well. They had, less stuff in their house.
Which family's committee just came in.
Yeah, exactly. We just got the luckily.
Right?
Yeah,
That's a good one.
Exactly. And so, and this is it now. But because we aren't seeing each other, we're a lot more nuclear in the way that we are. We're time poor, or we're a lot more materialistic. This is the reality. We want to spend more time in an insular way. We're not in touch with each other anymore, and so we lose that sense of responsibility. And this generation and each generation that comes, I think, is moving further and further away from that sense of responsibility. So all of these things are kind of packaged together when we're talking about community and activism and re-engaging, reigniting zakat and challenging riba. It needs to be seen in terms of this whole kind of ecosystem that we need to operate in, and everyone has a part to play in this.
And welcome to Muslimic Countdown. We're going to have a short round of countdown, gentlemen. Let's see how far up you get on the leadership board, on the leaderboard of this series, inshallah. So, Sheikh Sohail, you can. Our lovely Carol Vorderman is over there. All you have to do is ask for a vowel or consonant. Go for it.
Vowel, please.
A vowel, please, Carol.
Yeah.
A. Do you want to take turns? Go on.
Yeah, vowel, please, Carol.
I.
Consonant, please, Carol.
S. Imagine if
Consonant.
we got spell out zakat.
Yeah.
Consonant.
Yes, mashallah.
H. 5 more left.
Consonant.
Another consonant. H. There's 2 H's now.
And I will say a consonant, please.
Ooh. M. Sheikh Sohail.
Vowel.
U.
And consonant, please.
L. Now, before you choose the last one, remember that once the thing comes, the 30 seconds starts.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have a little boom.
So it's 30 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I know you. We will try. So I
This guy
think the
started,
next
man. This
one
guy's
I will
writing.
choose is. Oh, it was time.
Right.
Yeah.
So should I choose one then?
Go. You might as well.
Consonant, please, Carol.
Consonant, and the final consonant is Z. That was useful.
Oh.
Oh, goodness.
A waste of time.
Okay. Okay, pencils down. Now, you're gonna say the longest word that you have. The letters, the number of letters in the word. What was the number?
5.
5. You got 5 letters, and you got a
Everything was 4 for me.
4.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
What's
guy's
the 5?
Males.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
good
you
one.
copied me.
Good
Okay.
one,
Oh.
good one.
Very good.
Funny, I actually wrote a few words down. You just wrote one after glancing over at mine.
Okay, males.
He's
Is
got,
that
he's,
He
he's got a bit of a
learned
rep.
that- he
Was
learned that
unbelievable.
from Imperial.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
We were good at
your
that.
4-letter one was?
Yeah, it was male. I didn't think
Male?
of the males.
Yeah, it's always do a plural. It's always a good
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
a good one.
good idea.
I'm going to come back on the show again now.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to practice this
His
at
cheating
home.
doesn't get any better. So
If you find here's my audience interaction, if you found a longer word, then let us know in the comments below, and we'll
Yeah.
give you a special prize sponsored by Wahid Invest.
yeah.
Now the numbers round,
Oh, no.
ladies and gents. You can play at home as well. Choose. So if you look over there, and just lower your gaze for the bit on the right.
From our
So you could say, okay, can I have? So you have 6 numbers.
Mhm.
You say, can I have 1 from the top, 2 from the middle, and 3 from the bottom, for example? Go ahead.
No complex numbers here, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The simple functions. My peak was in primary school, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But anyway, give me a top one.
You have 50.
one from the middle.
9.
One from the bottom.
Ooh. 1.
Another one from the top, please.
100.
Another from the middle.
1 again. And last one is
Me, I'd say from middle as well. Mix it up.
4. And your target number is 723. And the
Alright.
timer starts now. All right. What's the highest number or the closest number you got?
I've got 702.
702. Amr, you have?
Mine was way off that.
Okay.
I was, yeah.
What's your working?
Mine,
Yeah.
I've got 9 times 100.
Which is 900.
Take away 4 times 50.
4 times 50.
Yeah. 700.
But
That's
then
700.
Oh, okay,
I
I get what you
then
mean.
I add
Okay,
2.
just added
702.
Okay.
I
Cool.
went for the 100 plus 50 is 150. Plus the 9 is 159. Plus the 2 is 161. Times 4.
You win. Okay.
Salman, what'd you get? 786.
I got 700 and I just got 700. I was speaking to Mahmoud.
Yeah, you just wrote down 700.
I wrote 723 actually. Okay, so Jazakallah khairan Sheikh Sohail and Umer Suleman. Thank you very much for coming. And well, put your names up on the leaderboard somewhere on screen maybe. We've only got 2 people so far, so you guys really have a shot for making a number 1 spot at the moment.
Hopefully we'll stay up there.
Yeah. Mashallah, tabarakallah. Okay, Jazakallah khairan for joining. We hope to continue the conversation.
It was
in
a
the
great
future.
pleasure.
Inshallah.
Thank you
It was a
very much.
pleasure was all mine. And Jazakumullah khairan to you at home for watching as well. If you like this podcast, give it a like and a share. Remember to get involved in the comments below. If you agree on something, disagree about something, let us know. Omar will surely troll through the comments and respond.
Can I also say, if people can contact you if they've got comments, if they want to, especially like university or the workplace, if they want any help on how to calculate zakat, it can go Sheikh Sohail. Or if they want to know how to protect their money from riba, then let me know, inshallah.
Excellent. Jazakumullah khairan. I've been your host, Salman Butt. Thank you very much. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.